Hi, everybody, and welcome to our episode 39 with Dr. Andrea Wieland. Andrea, thanks so much for being with us. I appreciate it.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. So why don't we get started like this? Andrea and I met one another through our daughter, Lizzie goes to Penn, and she's a runner there. And you'll come to hear what Dr. Andrea's role is down there at Penn. But why don't you just let listeners know kind of real quick, what was it like growing up? Where'd you grow up? You know, how'd you get into what you're doing?
Sure. So I'm really glad to be here, Danny. Thank you for the invite. I think this is a really great conversation to have, and I'm really looking forward to learning from you. And maybe there'll be a nugget or two for some of your listeners as we go along, or at least a story they can relate to.
Sure.
So yeah. So growing up, I actually was born at Penn, University of Pennsylvania. We'll talk, I think, a little bit more about that down the line. But Philly native. Moved down to Atlanta when I was about 3 years old. I'm the youngest of three. Father's a psychiatrist. Mother's a counseling psychologist. She has her master's there. So couldn't really get away from psychology in our family.
Right.
So we were full on into it. Always played sports. Our family is very athletically minded and oriented. Played soccer and tennis growing up, and then came back up to Philadelphia for boarding school at Westtown School in Westchester, PA, or actually Westtown, PA. Yep. So very, very familiar with the up and downs of the East Coast. And then was always, because of my athletic background, was always interested in high performance, being at my best. So early on in tennis, when I was 10, my mom had given me a book called The Inner Game of Tennis. It really was a changer. Yeah.
Timothy Galloway, right?
Yeah. So that's just launched my whole interest in, sort of the self-help type movement, if you will. Always looking for ways to get a cutting edge.
Yeah, right. And then you were tell folks a little bit about your field hockey career, University of Iowa, and then the American team, Olympics, Pan Am Games.
Sure. So again, just lifelong athlete, but early on, 6 years old, saw Nadia Comaneci doing her flips and turns and scoring tens and wowing the world. They say it was the first time the world had seen perfect. Mm-hmm. And just a beautiful example of a role model for a lot of Olympians. And so I dreamed about being an Olympian early on. And so everything that I was doing athletically was geared to fulfilling this Olympic dream. So when I went to boarding school, they didn't have soccer for girls. So I said, well, I'll play for the boys team. And in the 80s, they said, no, you won't.
Right. Yes.
Didn't have that progressive mindset of I probably could have made the team, but So then I knew how to use my feet, and I had a little bit of gymnastics. So they said, why don't you try goalkeeper? Mm-hmm. I was like, I don't know about that, but it seemed obvious that could take me to the Olympics. Picked it up pretty quickly. It was a goalkeeper. And off I went, got recruited at Iowa. They had just won the national championship the year before. So great field hockey program, great psychology program. Is really a match made in heaven, even though it's totally kind of a different decision than others would have expected me to have made going out to Iowa from the East Coast. But so then, the Olympic, I don't know how much detail we want to get into, but broadly speaking, I was highly successful at Iowa. When it came to the Olympic team, I was always sort of on the edge and got cut 8 times prior to finally making the Olympic team. So it was a lot of perseverance and persistence to make that dream happen, but got to play in my hometown of Atlanta, Georgia. So that was very
96. Yeah. That's cool. So now what's your title at Penn?
So I'm an Associate AD Director of Sports Performance. So so I oversee strength and conditioning, nutrition, mental health and performance, and sports med athletic training, and highly involved in our strengthening our relationship with Penn Med. And that's a new frontier that we're really launching, which is
right. Yeah, I think there's probably some great work to be done there. So when you talk about performance, and that's what I really want to zero in on, our podcast Back to Life is built on the premise that every day we come back to life, and it's a gift, and we've got a choice. What are we up to creating in our life, and how are we going about doing it? And I think all of us, whether we're on the other side of 50 or not, performance is really important for us. How are we performing in those roles that we have in life? So what does performance mean to you? How would you define it?
Well, it's a great question. I think it probably evolves at every stage that you're in, and what's important to you at the time. But I think there's probably some fundamental principles that I really tout as I'm talking to our student athletes, coaches, others about performance.
Right.
I think the foundation of mental performance, some other kinds of performances, this may or may not be a part, but there's a sense of fun and joy and fulfillment. Like there's a connection to it that feels really important. Some of the others principles I'd say around performance is about trusting yourself and trusting in others. That can really, really help bring things about. I'd say also knowing your why. Why are you doing what you're doing in order to perform? That's essential, because there are going to be very hard days, and there's going to be days that you're not motivated to do whatever it might be, even though overall you enjoy it. Sometimes there are some difficult days, especially when working to achieve a bigger goal or something beyond yourself.
Yeah, that's cool. You gave me so much as you're speaking right there, Andrea, Dr. Andrea. There's so many things I want to kind of pull through there. The one thing I think that's really important, in our podcast, we talk about finding fulfillment after 50. And, that's a good hook for people, I think. But the thing that I think is really important is we don't find fulfillment. We have to be intentional, and we have to create it. And I think it's really important when you're talking about the why, and you use the word achievement a few times. I always try to make the distinction between achievement is an outcome that's obtained through focus and action, right? That's an achievement. And then when you look at the definition of fulfillment, the word achievement is used in there. So fulfillment is an achievement that was desired, predicted, or imagined. So I think fulfillment is I'm getting those things done in my life that really connect to my purpose. There's a lot of other things we got to get done in life, achievements, but I think it's really that part of fulfillment there. So, and you talk about mental, right? And I certainly believe that our life is lived between our ears. You and I kind of talked about that before. What's the difference? And I struggle with this sometimes, although I think I'm coming to a clarity inside myself. What's the difference between our brain and our mind?
This is a great question, especially with neuroscience really being on the frontier of helping us understand what is really going on in the brain. It is sort of a least understood part of our body. But I would say brain is more of a location, where it lives,
right? Where
mind doesn't live anywhere.
Yeah.
Mind is everywhere where the attention or the focus is. And mind is beyond the self. I think it's more like if you want to call it a universal energy, if that's helpful, or some kind of weave of connection, because I know that I have thoughts that arise that are not from me or my brain, so to speak. I think there's sort of, this maybe gets a little esoteric, but I do think that there's if you pinch your leg, that's now where your mind is, right? Like you have an attention there and you have an attention here. Sure. So I think the best way to describe there is no location for the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. And for me, I think my mind is really my perspective on being a human being. And I absolutely believe that's connected to something bigger. I call it God, divine, consciousness. Again, whatever words people want to put on. So that's really, my perspective and how I'm feeling and how I'm being. And then I think from that, I load my brain with the software that then makes me kind of process it and do things. That's kind of how how I'm
like it. Yeah.
So what do you do with, in terms of our mental performance to perform as an athlete? Okay. But even more in life, what are some really strong principles, right? Connecting to purpose, like you said, but what else? I mean, what happens when, the proverbial shit hits the fan in life and we have a big struggle? An athlete gets injured, for example. I know you've talked with Lizzie and her heel injuries and all, and you've certainly supported her through that. What are some of the principles that you offer people and that the listeners, whether they're 50, 60, 70, or 30, should be aware of?
Yeah, I think what life certainly would has probably taught along the way somebody in their 50s, 60s, or 70s is that it's really about a process. Mm-hmm. And so performance, the more that it's process oriented, the more one can control the controllables. We talk a lot about that as an athlete. Yeah. It's kind of a mantra, if you will, control the controllables and really let go of or manage, oneself within the context of the uncontrollables or the non-controllables. So when the proverbial shit hits the fan, if you're looking all at that, it's quite a mess, right? So let's figure out the next steps of what you can control. Mm-hmm. And, I think a lot of times when people are not feeling psychologically safe, if you will, so they're fearful of taking risks or fearful of making a mistake and getting their head cut off for it, mm-hmm. the fear of being judged keeps them from having the freedom to let their best self arise or let the performance just rip. Like if they've trusted their training, as I talked about earlier, if they know their why, if they're having fun, then they can get back to really trusting themselves in the moment to know what to do. So that's where, you can hear the mind, you're connected or you get connected in your mind mm-hmm. to what is happening, and you can rely on that as opposed to trying to think your way out of the problem, if you will. Right. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no, that's great. When fear shows up for people then, fear of anything, fear of, COVID certainly had an impact on mental health for a lot of us. It's the fear of the uncertain. It's the fear of getting laid off. As we get older, it's the impending fear of our death. What are some basic things? And I know they're all a little different, but is there a basic approach to when fear shows up to identify it, manage it, and kind of move through it?
Yeah, I guess what I say when there's so much uncertainty, relying on some key pillars, the things that you can control, mm-hmm. Kind of set the table with your legs. The legs are the pillars that, help you feel more stable, because when chaos hits, you need to reach for that stability. Mm-hmm. And so some basic practices that I think are so simple but really powerful. Yep. Helps you then get into the zone of being able to solve whatever's going on. So, for example, I call it the core four in mental skills for the athletes. A lot with breathing. Deliberate breathing is a huge one. Yep. Different types of breathing for different situations, and it goes way beyond just deep belly breathing. There's so much more to it. Right. Very, very fascinating. We can talk about great books, etc. Yeah. The self-talk or the narrative or the story we're telling ourselves. Mm-hmm. Is it helping us or hindering us in this situation? Yeah. I would say creating deliberate intentions or goal setting. Some people don't like goal setting. They, I don't know whether it's the accountability or they just don't want to write it down, because if they didn't fulfill it, then it's a failure, which we want to get away from. But, just being, deliberate intention to be clear. And then I think there's a lot with mental rehearsal and imagery and being able to see yourself and feel yourself be successful in getting to the other side of whatever chaos is occurring, being able to move through that.
Yeah, no, I love those core four. And a big part of my work and certainly my life, I had a really bad accident. And when I started to imagine myself getting better and getting through the trauma, which I call vision, right? The ability to imagine what needs to be real. I mean, that saved my life, no question. And I believe that that's a very, very powerful principle for us to practice daily, every day, as you say, regardless of what it is. You might have a tough meeting with somebody, or, maybe you're going through a divorce or whatever. Control what you can control, like you say, and imagine how you're going to be in that difficult situation. And I think, as you said, feeling is so important too, because it's from our feelings that we're going to act, right? Our emotions and our feelings.
Yeah, the visualization is so underutilized. It's such a great skill. And a lot of people will tell themselves they can't stay focused because they do the breathe, and then they're thinking about dinner, they're thinking about their homework assignment, or they're thinking about the relationship, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, if we had $1 for every time we hear that, right, Andrea?
Yeah. So either guided, do your own, script and recording and guide yourself. I used to use what I called power words in preparation for the Olympics. So I just had old-fashioned index cards that I wrote the key words like confidence, explosive, lightning quick, trust, communication, leadership. I wrote those words, and then I used those to guide my mental rehearsal. So there might be like a focus wheel. Abraham Hicks talks about a focus wheel. So words that help you get into the mindset if it's difficult to close your eyes and cue yourself. So
yeah, I love that. I'm doing actually a lot of work on that word and our language, and I had Dr. Andrew Newberg, who used to be at Penn, and wrote a lot about our words and our language. He was on the podcast not too long ago, and then somebody sent me an email about the research that Dr. Emoto did, the Japanese researcher.
Yes,
did a lot of research on water.
Unbelievable.
Amazing how the structure of water could change from, powerful, natural, the way it should be, to deformed and not as strong. And then made me think, gosh, we're 70% water. So I think it's so cool when, an athlete's at the starting line, or somebody's going through a job loss or loss of a loved one or a divorce or something. Again, what are those words that they're saying to themselves about this? Are they using the words like, tragedy and I screwed up and it's my fault and all these other things? So when you work with your athletes, I'm sure you're working on that inner vocabulary.
It's really key for performance. And what I've learned, and this is something that we'll talk about, is that, I armored up for my first 50 years. I mean, I was a goalie. I literally put on a suit of armor. And I probably put on an emotional suit of armor with to be able to get yourself through the pain and the challenge and the frustration and the disappointment. And, all that comes with success. People see the success and have no idea what the mountain climb was really like.
Journey has
that journey was really like. So, I think when I look back, in vulnerability was not an option, but now I understand vulnerability differently in terms of being able to, take those courageous steps, be in relationship when it's scary to trust.
Yep.
I think that being able to really move through some of the difficult emotions, like through a tunnel, or otherwise you kind of get stuck in the tunnel if you don't acknowledge some of the challenge, and then you can get again to that other side of performance. I was pretty good at putting a lot of that stuff away. So those are some of the, things that I'm still discovering now of, how to do that.
Right.
But yes,
right.
Words are very, very powerful. Very much underestimated in terms of the impact it has on the emotional and mental.
Right. Both the outer words that we hear, right, from coaches, that I'm a little bit older than you, but growing up, coaches could roll a whole lot differently. We think about Bobby Knight grabbing people and Woody Hayes from Ohio State. And, man, the impact that it had, right, on their failure and loser and all these kinds of things. Yeah, pretty powerful. So I know you and I talked, and you joked that, this podcast is geared towards over 50, and you really let me know that you've just danced over the line at 50. And I appreciate that. as the host here, I got to watch. You're never supposed to ask a woman her age.
Yeah.
That rule doesn't apply so much here. So you're what? You're 51?
Yeah, turned 52 in July.
Turning 52 in July. Great. So what would be, if we look at this, and a lot of people I think make like 50 the halfway point. I don't know that many of us live to be 100, but it seems like the big 50. And I know when I turned 50, 40 was something, 30 was something, but 50 had a lot more. It brought a lot more awareness for me, I guess. And I guess 60 is going to do the same thing every 10 after that. What was one of the most significant maybe or intense challenges that you faced before 50?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was that's such an interesting question when I really look back, because I wouldn't name kind of one challenge. I think I just set up my life to be challenging. Like if it wasn't challenging, it wasn't worth doing. So, if you think about just even pursuing the Olympic dream, being cut 8 times prior to 96 and not really understanding why, because everyone's telling you, oh, you deserve to be on the team. I don't know why you got cut, which maybe was a favor, not a favor. I don't know which one. And then not really being told or understanding why. So you tend to personalize that there must be something wrong with me. I got to go back to the table, so that whole journey.
Did your inner dialogue change from cut number 1 to cut number 6 or 7?
Yeah, it was over a few coaches. I think it evolved. It was just get back to work, get better. You're be in control of what you can be, right? Like that is just be invincible. Just get after it. Don't be dispensable. So that was part of it. Then I had a business while doing a PhD and MBA simultaneously. So that was a lot of crazy making, but just long hours. The dissertation was a beast.
Oh yeah.
Then I started, 3 different types of businesses over the course of several years, lost a business to a business partner that ended up embezzling money that I had raised, which was just brutal. Like things like that was a lesson I did not want to learn. Like I was not interested in that lesson.
What was the lesson you learned from that?
Well, I mean, I think that I'm often in my pursuit of, being open and building relationships. I can be too trusting too quickly. So I need to learn more about a person. And, I started to have some suspicions, but anyway, follow your gut is the big one.
Follow your gut. No, I appreciate that, right? Follow your gut. Because there's, many of us that mantra of mine is lead with love. I think it's really important to lead with love. And, the second part of that would be bring the sledgehammer when needed, right?
Well, and it makes me think, be trusting, but lock your doors. Like, especially if you're in Philadelphia, like, right. You gotta have the balance between the two.
Yeah. I think that's great. So big challenges for you was getting cut 8 times and you kept coming back. The embezzlement, anything else?
There was I was a victim of sexual assault. I was the 4th victim of the crossbow rapist in Maryland when I was 23 and went to Maryland to coach. We eventually went on to win the national championship, which was a bonus out of there. But I share that with you in that, and I was instrumental in getting the person caught because I stayed on the line. I had left a number with the person to say, hey, you can get help for this.
Good.
There was a lot to the story, but basically it was a terrifying experience. But I bring that up, and that's why I'm such a big believer in the mental game.
Yeah.
Is that's what got me through to have this soundness of mind to be able to talk to the person afterwards, to get him to call in, and then we trace the line, and he ended up getting 4 life sentences and 120 years or something. Wow. But having the all the challenge of being in sport and at times wanting to quit, and knowing that I could get through it and survive and be better on the other side, and not let that person rain on my parade and ruin my life, was something that I want to teach young folks, the value of having mental and emotional skills and resilience, and that they're stronger than they think they are. So
I think that's powerful. And I appreciate you sharing that story with us and the work that you did there. So when you approached 50, and I think as I'm reflecting on that story that you shared with us, the courage that it took too, for the resilience. Because when we go through our traumas in life, like you did and I did, and I think we all have them, man, that's the test, right? That's perhaps the greatest lesson, because as we get through them, we're like, shit, bring it on. What else? If I can get through that, I can move through anything. And I think that's so important for young people and people of all ages to understand that, I'm working on book 4, and life is going to give you the shit show, man. And it really depends on how are you dealing with it? How are you dealing with the facts of that? And I admire you for that. So when 50 came knocking on your door, what was going on for you? Were you ready to ride your horse on the beach or what?
Did it get better? I don't know.
Yeah.
I got to share with you because I literally had to look up like the 5 major stresses of life to make sure, do I know what they are? And I'm really going through all 5 simultaneously.
And all the boxes were checked. Right?
All the boxes were checked, literally. So 2018, I left IMG Academy, head of mental conditioning there, to come to Penn. Was very enthusiastic because of my family's history with Penn, kind of returning to the roots. And a great job, the dream job that I wanted at an amazing university. So it was the move, it was the job change, it was then a relationship change because my partner was in Colorado and was not going to move out. So that was a long-term relationship.
That's
and then my beloved heart horse. This is one I might get tearful on.
All right.
Gorgeous Frisian died suddenly. We had no understanding of what happened.
Wow.
2 months later, my second heart horse, Xena, also died. We had no idea what happened. Just tragic.
Yeah.
A new partner, new relationship. My partner committed suicide. And that was, just beyond tragic.
Who suicide?
My partner's boss, who's the executive director of the Penn Counseling Center.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was awful.
I saw that.
It was just, and that was all it was 4 deaths in 3 months, or 3 deaths in 4 months.
Oh man.
So it was just like, and then I turned 50. So I was like, okay, I want to be able to meet the challenges and have the skills to meet those challenges.
Right.
And there's when you said bring it on, I was thinking, well, bring on like the fun challenges, not some of this other stuff.
Oh yeah, bring on the joys of life for sure. But sometimes, the thing I always recommend people, myself included, is pay attention for the joys when they come, because most times they just fly through and we don't give them any attention.
That's right.
We don't understand how valuable they are, but when we got to deal with the mess, then we're like, oh, what was me? This has my entire focus. So yeah, pay attention to the joys, the simple joys, for crying out loud. I mean, when we're done, I'm going to take a little run over, get a workout, and I'm just going to be happy I can run, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I use that term run loosely. I don't know how fast I'll be going.
That's right.
It'll be more than a walk. All the Penn people would fly by me, Lizzie and Ariana and all the girls down there. And I love your background too. We have Franklin Field back there. It's just amazing. I had to mention that. That is wonderful. So what, you talked about, death there, and that's probably the greatest trauma, not to dismiss any of the other ones. How do you deal with losing someone that you loved? When I say someone, I mean your horses as well. We had a dog we put down a few years ago, and I never wanted a dog. I never had one growing up. We would always say to my dad, "Can we get a dog?" And he would say, "You got 6 brothers. You don't need a dog. Go play with them." So I didn't want to get a dog. And then when we got Nova, our black lab, man, did he just become like a child. And then putting him down was my wife and I are talking about getting another dog, and I'm kind of focused. I told her the other day, I said, I know it would bring a lot of joy, but I don't know. I want to go through that again, So it's like I'm focused on the bad thing, which in my work, I offer people not to. But how do you deal with loss of life, and how do you kind of coach other people through that?
Yeah, I mean, look, an animal moves into your heart like a human does not, in totally different ways. They are different types of loves out there, right? And I would never be dismissive of somebody's experience of losing an animal, and actually, Zen was his name was Moments of Zen, was my 40th birthday 40th birthday present from my partner. So, there was a lot of significance to that. And that was coming off of that really hard time with the closing of the business and the partner who embezzled the money. So there was a lot of meaning in that relationship.
Yeah.
So like you talked about, is really pausing for the moments of joys, acknowledging them, celebrating them along the way. And I think, athletes are sort of known to what's next, as opposed to pausing and celebrating the mile markers and the wins and the joys of that before going on to what's next, and noticing little moments and capturing them and really experiencing them instead of always being on the fast train. So, for me, having the good memories, really acknowledging what he meant to me. I think if you can do some rituals around the loss of a loved one and, whatever that might look like for you, but it has to be, no one can tell you how to grieve, right? And everybody's has an individual process on how to grieve. And there's not a certain amount of time for the grief. It's not like, okay, 2 months and you should be over it. And if anyone says that to you, they're really not being sensitive to what's happening. So I think it's respecting the individual process and participating in some rituals and reflections that make it.
And I think what you mentioned earlier can be connected to this in that, we all need support when we're going through these tough times. And a lot of people, I know myself included, sometimes we won't let people in because we're going, they don't know what I'm going through. And of course they don't, right? I mean, like when you went through the sexual abuse trauma, there's a lot of people that did not, so they don't know that. And I still wouldn't dismiss people when they show up and they come from their heart to love and support us. They don't have to have gone through what, there's a lot of people that didn't get hit by 10,000 volts of electricity like me, right? And go out your feet and you're dead, and then you come back and your friend doesn't. But you got to allow people to show up and help you out. I think it's so important, right?
It is important. And you also have to recognize that it's to judge somebody for not doing it right in terms of them trying to show support is a distractor factor. That's maybe a waste of energy, because the fact that somebody's trying, even though it might be awkward and not quite what you needed. Yep. The fact that they're trying is what matters.
It's coming from love. It's coming from love. Yeah. And if it's coming from that source, it doesn't really matter how much, like you said, if it shows up in a different way than we would expect. I think you got to just tap into that love. Yeah. And
that showing up is just the presence matters most, and showing up for yourself is pretty important too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of times, even through the grieving process, we want everybody else to do the work, but showing up for ourselves is a really loving act.
Right. Yeah. I'm always interested in a lot of people, and especially spectacular people like yourself now, having been what you've been through in life, so many challenges. I'm always interested in what people do in the morning, their ritual, their routine. Do you have anything that you kind of do in the morning? Any boxes you got to check as you get into your day?
Yeah, I'm trying to let my gut decide what that is in the morning, but I enjoy listening to some kind of meditation type thing to set the mind for the day. I'm interested in the breathing. I love to have coffee as a sort of a ritual, the making of it, and it doesn't have to be coffee; it could be something else. I enjoy playtime with my dogs and being in nature if I can. If I exercise or write, then that is like amazing checklist. And
I get some more writing done, Andrea. You and I talked about this. I'm gonna stay on you now and get you writing some, because you've got some wonderful stories and some wonderful messages there. Help people out. I know the breathing is so important, and I'll typically meditate at least once, maybe twice a day, depending. Yeah. Sometimes a lead meditation. When the anxiety hits or the stress or whatever, what's just kind of because people go breathing, what do I do? How do I do it? What's one thing like breathing wise they can do? I know there's a lot of techniques, but what's one they could start to experiment with?
Okay. I'll give you a great one, and then I'll give a resource to provide some more ideas. So I love for kind of beginner being new at it is a white cloud, gray cloud. Mm-hmm. So that's just inhaling deeply into a white cloud, imagining it swirling around, and then breathing out a gray cloud, any tension or negativity or anything that you don't need. Mm-hmm. And as you breathe in and then kind of visualize and see something swirling around, and the lightness and the ease that comes with the white cloud, and breathing out any negativity or any stuff that you don't need. Eventually the white cloud can breathe in and exhale out a white cloud. And that can be just nice with both the visualization piece of it, the releasing of tension and acknowledgement of anything that you don't need, as well as just the breath and the physiological impact that breathing has.
Yeah. It's so important for people, right? So important. I love that one. I love it.
Yeah, super easy too. Nobody has to know that you're doing it. That's what is great about breathing. Yeah.
It's just the awareness, just the awareness to do that. So what's up for you the next 1 year, 5 years, maybe 10 years besides the book that you're going to write?
Yeah. Get on that writing. Get my discipline back. Right. So real quick, resource to consider is Breathe by James Nestor. Lots of different science supporting the power of breath and how important it is. It's a book, Breathe. Okay, yeah. Great. He also has a website, Mr. James Nestor, and there's different types of breathing videos on that people can get started with. Yeah. And I'm also working with Laird Hamilton, the big wave surfer phenom.
Yes.
Has
I emailed him last week for the podcast, but he's too busy. So you'll have to drop a line for him.
Oh, darn. Yeah, that would be an amazing one. Yeah. They have XPT app, and it has several breathing videos there.
So that's an app he has, Laird Hamilton, for the phone.
Yep. So you could he has a move, some workout stuff that you may or may not be of value to you, but I really did it for the breathing. And there's a lot of really amazing breathing techniques related to free diving, breathing without oxygen tank, et cetera. Right. So a lot around the CO2 buildup and, and about oxygenating body and other kinds of things. So lots of good stuff.
Talking about breathing through your nose a lot more when you're working out, I guess, because that. So I'm trying to do that a little bit more,
Yeah.
He's got a great line too of all the, it looks like some coffee stuff and,
oh, does he? Okay.
More natural products or something. Yeah. So what's up for you then for the next 5 years? Yes.
Well, so I'm in my third year here at Penn, so there's still work to be done. We're really have a vision for just helping the student athletes have an extraordinary student athlete experience through sports performance. Mm-hmm. It was so impactful to have a great experience at Iowa. Really impacted the rest of my life. So we have what's called a team around the team with those 4 areas that I talked about. Mm-hmm. So we're really getting going in terms of athlete monitoring, better training, faster recoveries. We're kind of doing it all. Nutrition, we're doing it all. So that's exciting, and we're going to continue to grow and improve that.
Right.
I would say part of that is launching what we're calling what I've named as high performance medicine meets sports science. So we're taking the concepts of sports science and applying it to healthcare providers and frontline workers and all that they're dealing with, so we can keep them healthy and in their games for longer.
Right.
This is strengthening our relationship with Penn Med, and in return, we potentially have access to the research, education, and technology that we would not maybe normally have access to help our student athletes have an even better sporting experience.
That's a great partnership, right?
It's amazing.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah.
To have that kind of organization in our backyard, and they're excited to partner with us. So it's, the conversations are so robust and exciting, and there's a lot of momentum being built. So it could be a whole Penn Med led Philly-wide initiative on the human factors of performance. So that's a big one. I got to get that book written. I have several. Maybe I'm writing too many at once. But one is the halftime. Halftime of that halfway point of your life, and reflecting and seeing how you want to live the second half. Similar to game time. At halftime, you reflect on the first half and what you want to take with you and what you want to change in the second half. Another one that I'm working on is the concept of 1 degree shift, which is small changes. And you can imagine when you're hitting a golf ball, a 1 degree and the trajectory where it goes if you just make a shift on where you make contact.
Yeah, I have a few shifts I have to make there because it's going right way too much.
Hey, we'll have to have you come to this simulation lab.
Oh, yeah, sign me up. I'll do that for sure.
Yeah. So those are some of the projects.
Yeah, that's great, and I look forward to your first book, second book, and many after that. What would be your bumper sticker if you had to say kind of your mantra for life right now at 51 years of age?
Always difficult to capture it in a few, but I seem to always talk about having fun, because if you're not having fun, what are you doing? So it's probably something like from the Arthur movie, Fun is a great thing to have.
Yeah, right.
Because if you're not having fun, what is the point? So I'm a big believer in I want my second half to be about fun and lightheartedness and seeking and experiencing joy and helping other people lead those their optimum life, because that is the essence of life, is about experiencing it.
Yeah,
that is it. So
it sure is.
Why do we get so caught up and boxed in? So yeah,
I always say there's a hell of a difference between just living, which I did after that accident, and being fully alive. And I think you've done a great job in our conversation in touching on, what it means to be fully alive, and it's to have fun, and it's be connected to something bigger, and understanding that that's part of your mind. It's having good, strong relationships with people. It's watching your inner story, your narrative, the power of those words. What else did you say? Control the controllables. So you made so many great points here that I'm pretty certain people, if they're driving or making dinner or whatever, when they listen to this, they're going, wait a minute, Dr. Andrea is talking to me right here about that. Huh. Is there anything, for those that are listening, on the other side of 50 or 60, what are your parting words to them besides have fun?
I think we truly are here in many ways for a short time. So, really, it sounds so trite to say, and it's said all the time, but really making the best of it and what it means to you. So living your life, not living somebody else's life or what other people expect you to do.
Right.
I think that, yes, we all have responsibilities to other folks. You're responsible responsibility is to other people, not for other people. And knowing the difference between that, they are responsible for their lives and living their optimum selves, whether that includes you or not. And so, I think we get really bogged down in other people's, expectations or pleasing others. And, certainly I have it at times. And building resentment, it's just hard on the body. So, all those thoughts have toxic effects to the body.
Literally, all that water, right? That's 70% of our water doesn't deal well with judgment and resentment, right? And regret.
Yeah, think about your brain, and it's built on a neurochemistry and electricity, and how it kind of goes throughout your body. So we really want to, feed ourselves with the good stuff, and just paying attention, because what you're doing now impacts you 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, and not I think this COVID time has led to a lot of folks maybe getting into some habits that they're not psyched about.
Right.
And beginning to say, do I want to live the next 6 months like I lived the past 6 months, and being intentional about the next 6 months to set yourself up for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, it's key. So, and we've talked about habits many times, right? Is to recognize the behavior and then just focus on replacing it with the new one, and not beat yourself up. So in the morning, right? Visualize the night before, visualize exercise. Visualize a good breakfast of fruits and grains or whatever. So important. Well, I feel like we could talk for a long time, and my thought is I'll have you back on this podcast at some point.
Sounds good.
I have certainly enjoyed listening to you, and I know the audience. I got some notes here. There's just some wonderful points right there. So I wish you all the best as you head off into your career. I look forward to our paths crossing down at Penn,
for sure.
Once this is all over.
I'm going to sign you up to be my success coach for my writing coach or something.
I am here for you. I'll do that, and you help me get my swing straight. Golf. And we all need coaches in our lives. That might be another one. And when it comes to habit change, it's progress, not perfection. Just eliminate perfection from your vocabulary. Perfect. It doesn't exist. Just get it out. Right.
And focus on, or accepting that you're perfect as you are, and you're just continuing to grow. So progress
instead of perfection. I love that.
Yeah.
All my type A people are going, no, I don't like that. I want to be perfect. At any rate, listen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's great to connect. And for everybody listening, just remember there's a hell of a difference between just living and being fully alive. So until our next episode, stay safe, and we'll see you again. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you, Danny. Enjoyed it.
All right. Bye-bye.